Hello and welcome to the latest bulletin from the Messiah. Today is the 18th of July 2008. It's now over a year since I first woke up and realised through my communication with the Jesus soul that I was the last incarnate of that soul and that I was the chosen one of God. And I've learned so much in that year, rather like the Buddha who said that his journey only began when he woke up under the tree. I feel very much the same way, that was the beginning of my journey. I really have learned so much since then. And seeing so acutely why humanity really does need a Messiah at the moment. The world around us is in a terrible state, and I don't see anybody who is clearly taking up the cudgels and presenting an alternative vision to humanity. In fact, all we see are scenes every day on our television sets of increasing violence and war, false flag terrorism, and other means to try and coerce people through fear. And of course, one of the greatest attacks on our current freedoms is that from the European Union. And I'm not here as some little-minded Englander to condemn a European movement. But the experience of the past has been that big governments, big empires, ultimately rule through coercion and not through consent. And as a result of that, people under empires eventually become slaves. And the EU is very much in that framework. Although we're told there's an EU Parliament, the EU Parliament cannot stop the Commission, the European Commission, from doing what it likes, basically. Now, we all know recently we heard that the Irish rejected the need for the Treaty of Rome, which would bring this new European treaty in, by voting against it. And because that vote is binding on the Irish state, therefore, it should not be allowed to continue in Europe, because if one state refuses it, the whole thing collapses. However, we know that the dark forces, the New World Order, will try and still push this idea, even though it has no democratic mandate, even though the original version of this was voted against by the people of Holland and the people of France. And so I say, I'm not saying this from the point of view of being a little Englander, I'm saying it from the point of view of protecting these people and people across the world from the increasing levels of effective slavery we see all around us. And therefore, I ask the Queen, I say to you, the Queen, I don't know what your name is, what you called, does he call you Betsy, does he call you Elizabeth? I don't know. But I appeal to you. There was a song 30 years ago by the Sex Pistols, God Save the Queen. That's why I'm wearing this t-shirt now. It had the immortal line in it, God save the Queen, fascist regime made you a moron. God save the Queen, she ain't no human being. And of course, as an impressionable young idiot, I believe that. The Queen ain't no human being. But that, of course, is not right. That was the thought of a young and impressionable teenager. And it's on that level I appeal to you as the monarch of this country. Obviously, as the Messiah, I don't respect earthly titles. But you as a human being in a position of enormous influence, to whom people look, you can make a difference. Our Constitution of 1688, which is all we have by way of Constitution, says that it is actually treason to sell this country out to a foreign power. And there's good reason for that, because this country is England, angel land. It's the land of Brutus, or Bruten, one of the incarnates of Jesus as well. In fact, the incarnates of Jesus have also been English monarchs. Athelstan, Edgar, King John and William III were all incarnates of the Jesus soul, basically, in the same way that I am the last one. And I don't know what they say to you at your coronation, because to me at the coronation it looks like they're anointing a Messiah. The orb, the rod, symbolic of course of the rod of Aaron. And we know you go behind a curtain and get told something. Now I can't keep track of what all these secret societies believe. They have some very funny ideas, but we do know they believe in a bloodline. And they do know, therefore they believe that the end of that bloodline, I think they believe will be the Messiah. So presumably one of your grandchildren, William or Harry. But you're the monarch now, and it is an ancient tradition of this country that the people appeal to the monarch in times of crisis. And this is a time of crisis, believe me, on a world level and for this country, because people who sell away our democracy are treasonous, not just to this country, but to the people in it. And all it would take for you is to not sign a piece of paper. You have that right to veto any act of parliament, and that is legally binding on that parliament. It does not then become law. Now, I accept that this law has not been used, your right to veto our legislation has not been used for many, many years, not since Queen Anne in 1707. But that is no reason that you shouldn't use it. It's written down, it's there, and this is the very way we can stop the European Union, not just in Britain, but also abroad. It can stop in its tracks the efforts of a new world order to create a world government through which they will coerce and control. So I'm not appealing to you primarily as the Queen, because that to me is a meaningless title. I'm appealing to you as a human being. And in the words of Edmund Burke, I ask you to do the right thing, basically. He is supposed to have said, what is attributed to him, is all that is necessary for the triumph of evil is for good people to do nothing. But what he in fact said was much more simple. If I'm elected for MP for Bristol, I will do it all within my means to fight for good and resist evil. And that's indeed what we must all do on this journey. We must all learn to live in unconditional love.